Welcome
Welcome back.
back.
We sound like radio people, when they're like, "Welcome back to."
That's where we
to
started. It's hard.
I know.
Old habits die hard.
Oh my god, I have to tell you when we're not recording, but in case anyone wants to know, I'll tell you also that I just read the loveliest little cute little rom-com, and it has to do with a radio show. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I know I have to send you. It's called First Time Caller. I have to give you all my opinions and thoughts at
Mhm.
another time. But yes, I was thinking about you the other day because I was like, "Ugh, not this rom com being set in a radio station." I was like, please stop. He runs a radio show. Adorable.
Stay tuned for the announcement of our radio-themed book club.
Oh, oh wait. Okay, I had a
No.
brilliant idea. No. Wait, I had a brilliant idea actually, not a book club, but I did have a great idea that I ran by one of our listeners. um,
Of course, we believe in y'all.
yeah, we do, and she thought it was a great idea, so now I'm bringing it to you live on air so that you can yay or nay it. We should make a playlist of all the songs that we talk about during our weekly, what are we listening to, so that our listeners, if they're curious, not my cats just tearing up the whole world right now,
Hello,
so that our
demons.
our listeners can listen along with us, right? And then we'll discover our new music too, like the fucking song you said the other day that I was like, what? So I think we should do that because I think that would be fun.
Not us making another playlist based on our radio show.
Well, at least this time we won't have 3 playlists. When we had a radio show, we literally had, our show playlist, our future show playlist for songs that we wanted to use in the future, and then our wish list of songs that we weren't licensed allowed to use, but we wish that we
But
coulda.
we
And you know
still
what?
loved, yeah.
All 3 playlists still go hard.
We're two really organized women with good taste. What do you
What shall
want?
we say? Stop. Sound like such douchebags. Anyways,
Yeah. Now we're getting
I
cocky
loved
about
our,
it.
episode last week, our mini. Many apologies if everyone was like, "Wow, did Camila just literally eat a granola bar and die?" The answer is our entire software crashed, and so Olivia was left by herself. And you know what? She held it down without me to finally react to all the things that she said. But she really did hold it down. And I do just want to say on a quick note that yes, and you know what? In a future episode, I think we should talk about just the whole idea. Oh, actually, you know what? It might relate to today's episode. So let's get into today's episode, and then I have a point to jump us off with. Go. What are we talking about
Let's
today?
go. All right. Today, our topic is motherhood. And you may be wondering, Olivia, how are you going to be talking about motherhood? You don't have any children.
The
That's
valid
a great
question.
question. Valid question. Great question. We're going to get into that. We are going to be starting this episode with our thoughts, feelings, opinions, questions, concerns about motherhood as a concept. And
Yes.
then Camilla will enlighten us on her experience, and we'd love to get some comments from y'all, some DMs on the gram, reviews on Spotify or Apple Podcast. If you resonate with any of the things that we say in this episode, especially if you are a woman with or without children.
Yes. I suppose if you're a guy listening to this, I think a lot of what we have to say will also resonate with just parenthood as a concept, not necessarily just motherhood, but there are going to be some mother specific themes in it. So where I wanted to start with, which was my point about the Pilates princess idea, is that I feel that women are often so minimized by the idea of, oh, like being basic is something that we just all abhor, right? Like I am terrified of being thought of as basic. I was thinking about this the other day with the whole pumpkin spice latte because right now we're in fall, right? And so women are ashamed to say that they like pumpkin spice lattes because that's a quote basic thing, or Ugg boots, like that kind of vibe. And so I was thinking about that when I was listening back to the part about the Pilates princess, is that I think it falls into that category of oh, she's just whatever, which I think really relates to motherhood because I think that there is so much pressure to aspire to be more than a mother, or not just a mother, or yada yada yada. And so I think that so many of us, the reason that we are terrified of one of the reasons, I won't say all, but one of the reasons that we're like terrified of it as a concept is because our whole lives we're taught that like it's not like we should have bigger dreams, which to be fair, I agree with on one point in the sense that like I don't think any woman should ever feel the pressure to um like leave a career that she really loves or to be a homemaker if that's not something that she feels called to do or but I also think that we've like gone so far as to shame women if that is what they want. And especially if that's their like quote career aspiration and they don't have other giant lofty goals. Like we either like she either has to want to have it all or
Ooh.
want to have a
Mm.
career. She can't just like want to mother. You know what I mean?
Yes, the have it all narrative is
Mm-hmm.
very 90s, 2000s when it peaked, but it's still a thing
Mm-hmm.
where if you are not now the discourse is, are you a trad wife? Are you like stay at home, mothering, homemaker, yada yada? Or are you more career
A
minded
working
and
woman.
working, yeah, work hashtag working girl. And both of those are valid, but there is that tendency that you mentioned to dismiss women who just want to be mothers or to interrogate whether they have, like you were saying, like bigger dreams or other dreams, as if being a mother is not already
A dream.
work and a dream. Yeah. So from from my perspective, my mom grew up wanting to do work, but her ultimate goal was to be a stay-at-home mom. She
Mm.
did all of her major work, went to grad school, did all of her professional, quote unquote life things, and then quit her job when I was due. And that was something that I struggled to understand until
Mm.
fairly recently. And my grandmother did the same thing. She was working until I was born because she wanted to be a grandmother. So this isn't just limited
Oh.
to, yeah, I know. And I hadn't known that until, however many years ago. But I just kind of thought that my grandmother was always unemployed. I don't know what I thought because my mom she wasn't unemployed either. She had like part-time jobs throughout when my brother and I were growing up. Um, but um she was working at a particular place. She had a part-time job and then she quit that job to be a grandmother. So it's not limited just to mothers. It also
Mm-hmm.
sounds like more of a just like a gendered thing, a gendered idea of what the expectations are supposed to be for women as they age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's one of those things where it's like when people when younger women say, "Oh, I don't want to have kids," and everyone kind of pushes the idea of, "Oh, just wait until you get older and then you'll change your mind, yada yada yada." It's kind of like that thing that we were talking about once where it's like as women, we are told like you're too young, like focus on your career, focus on your dreams, focus on you, focus on da 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 da. And then you hit like 26, 27, and suddenly it's like, why aren't you married? Why don't you have a family? Why don't you, you know what I mean? And it's just like, okay, and at the same time, like, especially with how many women, sorry, I don't know why my cat has something red on his face, and I'm like, what? I'm baffled by this. He's a white cat, so this is freaking me out. Um, not the problem, but it's a mess as always. Um,
Hashtag stay messy.
hashtag say messy. And so I think that there's just so much. I don't know if it's like a lack of like practical language around it, like so in my childhood, I never didn't have a mom that worked. I always had a working mom. That's all that I knew. Um and in fact, sometimes it would show up in like very interesting ways. For example, in high school, I went to a private high school, and as I've shared, and I remember when we would like get out early, like school would let out on like early release days at like 12:30, and the school wouldn't let us stay on campus, so they'd be like, "Okay, bye,"
You don't have to go
I'm
home, but you can't stay here.
I'm 13, 14, and I'm like, "Okay, well, what do I do?" And they're like, "Well, why don't you have your mom pick you up?" And I'm like, "Well, she's at work," and they're like, "Oh." So it was like a running joke that us, all the kids with like working parents, would just like walk to Jamba Juice, just sit at Jamba Juice until our parents could pick us up.
Just vibe.
But I think for a long time I was scared to want kids because I thought that it was a bad thing to quote just be a mother. And I when I was 8 years old, I remember I don't know why I always point to this example, but I remember there's a day where someone said to me like, "Oh, Camilla, when you're a mom." And I was 8 years old, and I turned around and said, "Oh, no, actually, I'm not planning on having children." And they said, "Oh, what do you mean? Why not?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm planning on working in international nonprofit work, and so the travel schedule is really not gonna lend itself to parenting."
8 years old.
Yeah, we've discussed. I was a freak. I still am. Anyways, and I really genuinely I just couldn't conceptualize like the idea that I had of my life and the things that I wanted to accomplish and do along the same vein as like having children. And as time went on and as I got older, and by older I mean like not a small child, I think part of it was just I was around so many um more like traditional family structures where it was like that in the sense of stay-at-home moms, like doing their thing. And that's not to hate on that by any means, but it just like I looked at that and I've always deeply known that that could never be me. And so I felt like that was my only option, right? And so that was, middle school, high school. I think a lot of this conversation also has to do with our ideas about relationships, our ideas about
Big
marriage,
time.
our
I'll get into
ideas
that in a
about
second.
our parents. Uh-huh.
Ha.
And then when I met my partner, I was able to admit that I did really want to be a mom. Like I felt like that was the next thing. And as we've discussed, because I was running around in my like late teens, early 20s in this like high like net worth
High
circled,
power,
very
hashtag
like
girl
personal
boss.
development, hashtag like we run this town kind of vibe. It was really scary for me to think like, oh, I want kids because I also, there is now, I think, again, more dichotomies, right? Like you're either, oops, I got pregnant and now we have a baby, or you're, I've planned this down to the cent and I have been planning this for 7.5 years approximately. We are on a timeline here and now we are ready to have this child. And so again, I couldn't find myself in either of those poles. Like I on one hand I didn't want to, oops, I had a baby, but when I met my partner and when we got together, I really realized how much of my ideas around my fear of having children wasn't necessarily that I feared having children because I love kids and I've always loved kids and I was a childcare provider for a long time. It was that I never had someone that I trusted to raise kids alongside. And I think that what it really boiled down to is I didn't want to have kids alone, or I didn't wanna feel unsupported with children. Like,
Mhm.
that's really what was scary to me. And so, the other thing too is, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in our episode about queerness and sexuality, that meeting a man who aspired to be a stay-at-home dad, who, like, loved the idea, who was wonderful with children and like wanted all that chaos, like if people when people ask, like I'm happy to tell people that Dom had baby fever long before I did. He was the dude in a grocery store like waving to babies from across the aisle. Like he's always
Oh my
known
god.
that he wants to have children. There is no universe in which I can imagine a world in which he's not a dad. There are many universes and many lives in which I know that I would be happy and fulfilled and not be a mom. And so I think that that's the thing too, right? Is again with the dichotomy, it always felt like when like from the outside looking in, there was either the woman who had an accidental pregnancy, decided to carry that pregnancy to term, decided to be a mom, like the that or the um like life happening in some way and ending up mothering in some other fashion, whether that's fostering, adoption, whatever, or the woman that like that was her dream. Like from the time she was little, she always saw herself as a mom.
Right.
And I've just never fallen into either of those sides, and the older I got and the more I was able to like really take a look at that in myself, like I reached a deep conclusion that I would be good either way. Like
Mhm.
I wanted to have a baby, I wanted to be a mom, and at the same time, like if I didn't, like I felt good about my life and the people that are in it and the things that I'm like working towards and around. And I knew that there are many children and other many ways to mother and ways to like be a positive influence, even if I didn't end up like having a child of my own. I think in that conversation too, so much of that is the fact that I've never felt like I've had to have biological children in order to have children.
Mm.
Like if someone could walk up to me tomorrow with baby in their arms and be like, "Sorry, here you go," and I'd be like, "Well, okay,
Guess we're doing this. Yeah.
guess get right." Like, and I think that's a good thing, and also I think that that let me hide from the fact that I wanted to be a mother because
Mm.
it almost opened me up to, well, if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And not owning like the truth, which is that I did want to be a mom. I just was also going to be okay if I didn't end up being a mom.
Right. Yeah, oh my god. I'm literally taking notes. If we end up putting this somewhere where you can see this, then I'm literally taking notes as you're talking because I have so many thoughts about this. Um, oh my god, where do I even start? Okay. It turns out, so Camilla and I had this very intimate friendship, as you know,
Oh
from
God.
listening to our previous episodes.
Why do I feel like every time you start with a sentence like that, I'm like, is she gonna talk about how like gay we are? Like, why? Do I always go there? Anyways, please
Yeah.
continue.
Well, what I'm saying, like, we had this intimate friendship, and then, we didn't talk, and now we're reconnecting in totally different stages of life. And it turns out that we have a lot of the same ideas about things that we maybe didn't have when we were in college. And it's just so funny to me that we have now found ourselves still in different stages of life, but like having the same values and thoughts on potential, like you mentioned that there are lots of different timelines where you weren't a mother, and there are all these different ways to have children. And I've thought a lot about that myself. My sort of, I don't want to say my journey, my the way that I have thought about
My
motherhood.
progression through the concept that is God, you sound like a douchebag. It's your turn to sound like a douchebag. Continue.
You're welcome. My my thoughts on motherhood have changed so much, not only over time, but depending on the people I've been around. And again, we'll talk about this in our queerness episode, how I've discovered my sexuality. because that is so it when you said that you weren't sure you wanted to be basically, you weren't sure you wanted to be a mother until you saw, like, how Dom interacts with children and how much baby fever he has. Bella's the same way. Bella, whenever you listen to this, I love you. That's exactly what it was for me, where it was just like, it's not that I don't love children, obviously. I work with children. I love them. They're adorable. I was doing my field work last week at a different school where I'm working with second graders, and just like the questions they ask and their little faces, they're just so precious. And I can't wait. Like, my younger brother is engaged. I can't wait for him to have kids so that I can dress up my nieces and nephews and be the fun auntie. Like, I'm so hyped for that. So there was never, same for you, there was never a timeline for me in which there were no children anywhere. Never have I been anti-children around me.
Which is what I think, not to cut you off, but I think it's such a misconception about people who are childless by choice is that they don't like kids. Now, are there plenty of childless people who don't like kids? Yes. But there are also plenty of people who have kids who don't like kids. You know what I mean? Like, there's just plenty of people who don't like kids. Let's be super clear. That has nothing to do with whether or not someone is childless or not. And I think that especially folks who are childless by choice, it's not that they haven't thought about it. It's not that those are the people that have thought about it the most, that have made that like concerted decision for whatever reason. And I would much rather have tiny humans be raised by people who truly and deeply want them than by people who feel obligated to have them.
Snaps, snap, snaps. That is exactly where I was. I identified as a child-free woman up until fairly recently, because until I met my girlfriend, I was still very, like, I don't know about kids, and a lot of that, again, has to do with the people who are around me because I work in special education, and I know the potential for your child to have a difficult life based on their brain chemistry, or, I've met a lot of kids with syndromes I have never heard of. And a couple of my students have this syndrome that is like so unbelievably rare. It's like, it's insane. So I've seen all of these things that have intimidated me, and maybe be like, I don't want to chance it. If I'm going to have a child, I want to be able to give them the quality of life that they deserve. And I'm a teacher, haha. So for a while, I'm not going to be able to do that. And that really put me off of having children in general, because there is this timeline that we were talking about. It might have even been in our first or second episode too, where there's this timeline, especially for women, that you need to find your life partner in your late 20s, have kids in your early 30s, or you're dust. And either you will have children who have problems because your eggs are old, blah, blah, blah. Like, there are all of these threatening narratives that come out of women aging. So I went from being in high school and, crafting names for all of my future children with whatever boyfriend I had at the time, to wanting to adopt because my college boyfriend was adopted, to not wanting children because I was terrified of what they would be like, to, oh, I could do that. Like, it's gonna be hard in a lot of different ways, but I'm not as terrified by the idea, and I'm not sure I'm not sure still if it's like an absolute 100% for me, but again, there is a timeline in which I do not become a mother, and I'm sad about it. So there's a lot there's a lot going on here.
Yeah. You know, wow, I can't believe this is about to come out of my mouth. Um, I have not talked about this publicly. God, why do I feel like I just have like the most influencer douche quotes sometimes, and you know what? It's part of my brand, I suppose. Um,
We're rolling with it. We
but
have
we're gonna
over
roll with it,
60 listeners now. We're big.
which is crazy. I honestly, y'all, I cannot believe that many people have listened to us. Yeah, but in all honesty, so I used to share a lot more of my personal thoughts and feelings on Instagram. Nowadays, I don't, not necessarily because I don't want to or because I'm so much more private, but it's really just comes down to a time thing. Like the amount of time that I have to sit down and like formulate cohesive thoughts is lessened. But in 2022, at the tail end of it, Dom and I had a false pregnant, like a false positive, and I have never been so like scared shitless as I was in that moment where like I saw like because it was like the clear blue, so it just says like pregnant. But it was like instantaneous. Like it felt like my life like completely changed in like a moment. Because all of a sudden, like I spent the whole night like being like, oh my God, like this time next year, like I'm gonna have a baby this like this old and like Dom and I talked that night and like I still remember like us just like whispering like all the things that like we were about to do. And then when we found out I wasn't actually pregnant, I can't begin to explain like the devastation. And like I'm not here to like compare anything to, like compare journeys and like I've personally never had a miscarriage that I know of. But having like that moment and like really like reframing my entire life around the idea and then a couple days later like getting the negative blood test back because I'm me, so I'm type A. So I was like, oh, I need to know exactly how far along I am. And what's interesting is I had just signed up for like a fertility thing to like start measuring my fertility just to have more information about my own body. And I canceled my appointment because I thought I was pregnant. And I had called them and they had congratulated me. And so like I was just in like a matter, I'm like I'm like a do it right now. Like I'm not gonna sit around and whatever. So I I was so devastated, and it was, like, in that moment that I really realized and recognized how much I really wanted to have a baby and, like, not just have a baby, how much I wanted to be a mom, like, in the moment where I realized that wasn't what was happening, and it hurt for, like, a year. Dom and I would just, like, on and off, like keep coming back to and after a couple months, it was almost like we were, like, embarrassed to talk about it because like, I came to him, like, 6 months after it happened and was like, "I have to tell you that, I'm still sad about this, and I don't understand how I'm sad about, like, an idea," but it really did feel like the ground shifted beneath my feet and then suddenly shifted back, but it's not necessarily that things felt empty, it it just felt so different. So, that was December of '22. And we spent the whole year feeling that. And then in January of 24, we came together and we had a conversation. At that point, we'd been together for 7 years. Um, oh God, I hope my mom's not listening to this, but having unprotected adult activities for much of that. Um, and so by that point, like I had gone in 23, I went and like got my levels checked and yada yada. Like I went and told my gynecologist like what my levels were at and we had a conversation about it and all of that and like everything seemed quote normal, but I could never catch myself ovulating and I wasn't even trying to try for a baby. I just wanted to make sure that like I could have a baby. And by the end of that year, it just was like, okay, like we've been like it's been up a chance has been there has been presented to the bodies for several years now and not even like a whiff, like not even a hey, we conceived a baby and then lost said pregnancy. We reached a point where we were like, well, I guess this just might not be in the cards. And I was terrified, honestly, because like I said, Dom's meant to be a dad. And so I knew that I could come around to the idea and like find inner peace around it and be okay. Jesus Christ. Not having a baby. But I didn't know how Dom was gonna handle that. And, like, honestly, if it had come down to it, if he was like, "No, babe, like, I have to have a baby in order to feel happy and fulfilled in my life," which is what I thought, then I would have been like, "Okay, like, if we can't do that together, then we're just not gonna be able to, like, remain together." But we had a long conversation about it, and he had come to a similar conclusion that, like, he was gonna be okay, like, we were gonna find peace and harmony, and we kinda just, like I'm not gonna say we were like, "Okay, that's it. We're never gonna talk about this ever again," but we did reach, like, a good like, a stopping point, like, it didn't hurt anymore, it had been a year. We felt pretty grounded in our decision. We, like, have so many nieces and nephews. We knew for a fact that we would wanna foster later down the line, and so we felt pretty good about it. And then 6 weeks later, I got pregnant.
So
Um
it goes.
That's how it goes. But the reason I bring that up is because I think that I think that there's so much about the conversation about motherhood as a concept and about wanting or not wanting kids that's also wrapped up in like if I don't want it, then if I can't have it, it's not going to hurt as bad. Especially since most people our age, late 30s or sorry, early 30s, late 20s don't get their fertility tested until they're in, like, their mid-30s, and so they don't have those conversations with their doctors, and it's just, like, this giant unknown, and, like, people just, quote, "expect it to be easy" until you're trying, and then suddenly it's not easy, or as easy as you imagine back when you're 16 and you're told if you have sex one time without a condom, then surprise, you're gonna bear a child. So I think that there is just so much to be said for giving people the opportunity to make these kind of decisions or have these conversations with themselves with information, not just with an idea. Because, and I find this all the time. I actually think, Bella and I were talking about this, right? Is like when people make these timelines about when I want to have kids, everyone's always assuming it's going to go well, the process of having said
Exactly.
children. And what if it doesn't, Like, what if it doesn't? Or what if you find out it's gonna be more expensive or more complex than you imagined, or. Like, why not I don't know, this is just like my eternal soapbox is like, why don't we encourage women in their 20s, in their early 20s to start thinking about things like freezing your eggs or start thinking about things not so that they can have children, but so that they feel the freedom of being able to make those choices from an empowered point and from a point of like, okay, I've set myself up for whatever possibility I would like to pursue. Even if that possibility then becomes, I actually don't want to do anything. I store my eggs. I no longer want to store them. I'm going to donate them or sell them or get rid of them or whatever. And then it's done. But like, what a different place we could have those conversations on. Or even if we started asking questions really early on, like, how do you feel about IUI? How do you feel about IVF? How do you feel about like these things that we often don't think
Mhm.
about until we have to make a decision in a much more emotional and in a much more like fraught place?
I once again am taking notes because I have competing thoughts about this topic. She's a Virgo and an academic. Um, so the first thing, I think the reason why, or one of the reasons, because nothing happens in a vacuum, everything
Sure.
is intersectional here. But one of the reasons why that conversation doesn't happen, I think, is also very gendered because I don't know, how our listeners were raised. You can tell us in the comments about this as well. But as women, our relationship with money is
Mm,
different, and it's very parallel when you're talking about finances versus family planning, how women are spoken to, where we are just getting into this era, I guess, right now, this phase of our society where women are educating themselves about money and investing and retirement. And it's not just from a place of hashtag girl boss, it's like realistic financial advice to help women be independent and feel empowered and make their own financial decisions. And that conversation, it sounds like from my coworkers I've talked to who have had children anywhere from their mid 20s to their early 40s, it sounds like that conversation about fertility and all of the things involved in family planning, that conversation has not trickled down yet. The
Mm.
money conversation is happening, but we're not talking about, and that's fine. Bella and I were talking about this the other day too. Like, at what point do we decide to freeze our eggs or do something, and what are the costs? We were this exact conversation we were having. And so much of that also, so this is there's the financial aspect, and then once again, queerness. Depending on what your sexuality is and who you intend to partner with for your family planning, that also changes the conversation. If you are queer, if you are two, if you're a same sex couple and you're trying to start a family, that's a way different conversation than a straight couple. And if,
Maybe.
yeah, maybe.
Maybe, because
Hmm.
because I think that there is so much to be said for the openness with which queer folks, we have to walk that line. You know, I don't have a single lesbian friend of mine who wants kids who hasn't thought about the cost of IVF. But I have plenty straight friends of mine that are like, "Holy shit, IVF costs how much?" when they go to research it because they need it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, the
And so,
conversation, the timing of it can be so
yeah.
different.
Yeah, totally. And but I do think also, God, now this is just turning into an episode about queerness. So tiny, tiny, tiny little aside, and then we'll get back. I promise. But I think that this is such an interesting conversation when you think about like the bi erasure that exists for people, right? Because bi women are like presumably won't know what gender or sex of partner they're going to have until they are in a committed relationship that they decide to keep, right? So, if anything, bi women are probably the most uninformed as far as to like what is potentially out there that should be more informed because their situation could go one of many different ways depending on who they're with. And again, if they had already thought about freezing their eggs or IUI or IVF or whatever, then that also plays a very big impact in who you decide to set yourself up with. Not to say that you couldn't have opinions and then meet a partner and then like change those opinions around, sure, but like how much more empowered could we go into certain conversations with our partners or prospective partners if certain things like had already been thought of and we already knew our own non-negotiables when it came to fertility, you know, like it, because I think that it's so interesting that when we talk about queerness, we almost exclusively talk when it comes to fertility, right? We almost always talk about how straight couples don't know how expensive having children is for queer couples, which negates, I think, lots of experience. Do I think that that's true? Absolutely, 100%. I agree. And also, like, I just think how it, I think it really boils down to like the necessity for fertility treatments for same-sex couples sometimes, because that also excludes like a whole batch of other things, right? Found family, adoptive parents, whatever. But also just like how much just we don't understand fertility as a cost. And we can get into finances and a whole
Oh, we
whatever,
could
but
do
we just
multiple episodes.
right,
Yeah.
we just don't think about the cost of fertility. That's really like what it comes down to.
Yeah, because it's assumed. It's assumed that if you're of a certain age, that it's just gonna happen.
Right. And you you could be infertile for all you know. And how devastating to find that out when you're in the throes of trying to have a baby.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So we will continue that thread of the conversation in both our queerness and financial diary episodes.
The finances of the what we should call, like, yappers and their wallets. I think that would be funny. Um,
Brilliant.
yes. So anyways, so back to back to our point. Um, you were talking about how you didn't like that there are many universes in which you decide not to have a child
Mhm. Yeah.
or to want a child since you don't have yet a child. But
Yeah. I mean, there's the potential for one in there, but I mean, nothing's happening there. Uh
okay, so one giant thing that I want to bring up, and yes, it does have to do with money, but like specifically when it comes to the concept of motherhood, I want to talk about that here. It's related, but let's focus on the motherhood perspective. I think that there's also this massive pressure. We talked about kind of like the career and the like the expectation that you get to a certain point and you quote like have it or don't, and then when you find yourself not at that very clear point, you're like, what the fuck? I think that there's also this massive pressure to nowadays, like especially with as much like quote therapy as people are doing and as much as like growth and healing and all this stuff, the expectation to quote like have your life all together before you become a mother is massive.
yes. Oh my
And
god.
people are so judgy of a person, but specifically of a woman who has a child before she quote has all her shit together.
And that is a contributing factor for me.
Mm,
I
tell me
don't
more.
want to have yes, I don't wanna have a child if I am not making a certain amount of money, if I do not have a very secure job, if I part of this comes from living alone for several years and getting myself into some habits, but there's a person I want to be to enter motherhood, and I don't totally have a clear picture of what that person, does or looks like or acts like, but I know that I'm not her yet. And I don't totally know what the expectations are that I have placed on myself
Mm,
because there are so many expectations societally and in terms of family and social media, like all of these outside voices present very different pictures of motherhood in terms of age, career, lifestyle, just like preferences. Like
yeah.
do I want to be a mother of a human and a dog? I don't know if I really want like do it. There are
Okay,
so
that's like
many
that's
factors.
a whole other thing. Can
Yeah,
I pose a question that you
always.
might not love?
Yeah.
Here's my question. Um, so you say that you know that you're not her, but like
Mhm.
that's the big defining thing. Have you ever considered that in order to become her, you have to become a mother first?
But no, that's this episode is called The Paradox of Motherhood. Because that is so true. You can't really know until you get there, and that happens every time. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with the mothers that I work with, my work moms and aunties who have their own children, who have said, "Oh, I thought I was gonna be this type of parent, and it turns out that I'm more like this." Or, "I used to cook dinner every night, and now my teenager makes her own frozen meals." There are so many things that change at birth, and then as your kid grows up, and you don't know anything.
Yeah, and my point is specifically to the like, and here's the thing, I'm not advocating like have a child on a whim or like whatever, da 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 da. Da. But I think oftentimes, especially the type A, like uh let me be the most put together person, whatever, suffers from this delusion. I'm gonna just call it that. That they will quote arrive sometime and then look around their life and be like, ah, yes, it is perfect now. Now let me welcome a child. And while I do agree that there are worse times to have a child than others, I it's just such a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Like there really isn't a perfect time to have a baby. I think much more important question, honestly, when I hear you talk about like making a certain amount of money or being in a super secure job or whatever, like all of that shit can go away in an instant. You could be in a layoff, you could be you could be in a quote super secure job and then your company gets bought out or your school gets bought out or some shit happens or you become disabled and then surprise you can't work anymore. Like all of that is like much more fragile, I think, than the person that you choose to parent alongside. And more importantly, than like the skills and the personal like knowing of yourself in the sense that like knowing that you will figure your shit out. Like that point of confidence I think matters much more than like the reality of your career. Again, there are certain practical things of just like having a child. Yes, absolutely, of course. Again, don't like just have a baby, whatever. But I wish that I had spent less time feeling really shitty about getting pregnant when I was unemployed and more time appreciating all the skills that I had at my disposal that plenty of people don't, and more time appreciating the fact that if the reality is like quote not making enough money, and I wasn't even unemployed, I was underemployed because I was like freelancing and I was running my own thing and I was whatever, so I just was underemployed, I guess I should say. But like there are so many things that I had like that my baby was born in much less dire circumstance than I made it out in my head because I expected myself to be at a quote certain point, certain level, certain whatever when I had a baby.
Well, isn't that the definition, at least in part, of the arrival fallacy? I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I'll do this and this when, and you never you never get there. You do everything you possibly can to get wherever there is, and then you die. So, this is Olivia once again being the biggest hypocrite she's ever met.
No. No, I think it's fair and I think it's a very common experience. I think that you know what it is like I think personally part of it just comes from like being scared for people to look down on you.
Fear
And
of disappointing people. That's a big one. We could do
yeah,
a whole episode on disappointment.
or just like fear of people judging you for your choices.
Mhm.
And to that I say like, yeah, makes sense. And also, people are gonna judge fucking all the kinds of choice. As a parent, people are gonna judge every fucking choice you make all the fucking time, from the products you use to the fucking types of what the fuck was I looking? Oh my god, I was watching an Instagram reel of a mom who just recently had a baby, and she was sharing like she's like a chef, so she was sharing like these like frozen freezer meals that you can make and like meal prep for yourself. And me, I was like, oh my god, that's so helpful. She was like, yeah, you can like prep all these, stick them in your freezer, and then you're like better. I was like, that's what I fucking need because I need to just eat some shit up. And you would not believe the amount of people in her fucking comments being like, okay, but could you have at least put them in glass um cups and not in plastic Ziploc? And I was like, oh my god, we really can't do anything in this world. So like that's my thing is people are already gonna judge you for fucking everything when you're a mom or when you're a woman. So like who the fuck cares? 'Cause at the end of the day, like, the most important thing is, like, knowing that you're gonna have your back or knowing that you and your partner are gonna have your child's back, and I think knowing who you're gonna be as a parent matters much more than knowing how you're gonna be as a parent. Like, what decisions exactly you're gonna make or, like, what aesthetic you're gonna fall into or what yada, yada, yada. Because 'cause you're gonna figure a lot of that out as you fucking go. Because you don't know fucking anything, right? Now we're getting
Or
into the
even
realities.
yeah, Susan mentioned was making
What?
decisions about the school her child
I what the fuck are
is
you saying
going
right
to.
now?
7 years.
Um, yeah, I just think that yeah, I think we just go back to the same thing that we've talked about in all the other episodes, right? Of, like, we spend so much time worrying about, like, what we're gonna do when we should really think about, like, who we're gonna be. And now I've gotten really meta.
That's the message, though. If you're gonna take anything away from this episode, folks, because we could really do a part two
We really
on
could.
yeah.
And I'll keep my thoughts on, like, the realities of motherhood, like, very, very brief. I think that there are certain, like, very distinctive things that I feel having become a mom in the past year, which is crazy to believe that my darling child is gonna be 1 in a couple of weeks. Uh, I have never been more pro-choice than I am after having a baby.
Oh.
I feel like it is so hard, and it is so hard when I full-heartedly, wholeheartedly want to be here. Cannot imagine what it would be like if I didn't. Um, I feel like I doomsday prepped in my head for all these things that never came to pass. Which, I have OCD, so there's that. But but even just, like, stuff about my body, I expected to feel a certain way about my body, so I, like, prepped all these ways that I was gonna combat all the d whatever, and then I haven't felt that way about my body. And in the beginning, there was so much judgment because I thought that I was supposed to be, like, obsessed with my baby and, like, never wanna, like, leave her side, da 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 da, and I wasn't, because I think at my core, I know that I'm a better mom when I step away from my daughter, because who I am at my core is just, like, I love to be out and about. I love to, you know me. I love to be out talking to a little rando about some little rando things. There are things about me that have not changed, they've just gotten amplified, and, like, I one day I can't wait to show my daughter those things, and, like, God hope that she's an extrovert, because otherwise, I told, "Babes, I can't. I don't know how to walk the world as an introvert because the whole thought of it terrifies me." Um, but yeah, I had so much guilt because I wanted to step away from her and I wanted to go do other things and I didn't wanna hold her 100% of the time, like, so many women talk about, "My god, I couldn't let anyone take care of her. I couldn't let anyone take her for an hour. I couldn't," and I just did not have that experience, and I had friends who have had their baby, like, right very close to mine, who that was her experience, right? Like, she's obsessed with her baby, like, can't get enough of her baby, and I just N not me, and I think that I judged myself really hard for that at the very beginning. That's actually why I went back to therapy at first, was because I was like, feel really, like, judgy because of me. So I've really been able to kind of, like, settle into, like, yeah, there are things that I knew about myself that I've just confirmed throughout becoming a mother, like the fact that I am not built to be a stay-at-home mom. I just am not. And that's not to say that in a season I couldn't do it for a time, but when I look at my life, I have so much respect for the people that can share their energy with their children in that way, and I also have so much certainty in knowing that I cannot. I am honestly loving being the being a working mom. Like, I feel like I also had so much guilt that I like to work. that I like leaving the house. Right now I'm not working from home anymore, which is different. I'm like going somewhere to work for the first time in a long time. And I love it. I love going somewhere and decompressing in my car and commuting. I fucking love my commute. To be fair, it's also a really short commute, but I love playing my little songs and getting my little time and then arriving somewhere and then leaving that somewhere and then coming home to my baby. But the biggest surprise that I'll share has been my friendships. Nothing has clarified for me quite so clearly. The things that I have room for in my life as a mom, like if my friends or just like people cannot accept that my number one priority now is me and my daughter, and then me and my partner, and then you know me and my family, whatever, but like in that order, and everybody else comes second or third or fourth or whatever. Like it's not because I don't like people anymore, but I cannot give of myself the way that I did before I had a baby, and I never will again because my whole life has absolutely like from its core changed. And it's been interesting to see how that has really weakened some relationships. As you know, Olivia, I'm going through a friend breakup. Um, and it's been really hard because the people I would least expect to have had a hard time with that are. And also, it has been so wonderful to watch friends of mine that I would have never expected show up the way that they have and like deepen relationships that I thought would stay at like a certain level that have now gotten a lot deeper because I have limited time, and these friends understand that and like have really shown up for me and have not in a like, oh, like I get it, because a lot of these people are my single friends that don't have children or even partners, right? But I think that I've been able to ask for support in a way that I never have had the ability to or the necessity to. And I really just learned so much about myself. And I love being a mom. I really do. I love being a mom. And I'm so happy that I I was about to make a joke. I'm like, I'm so happy I didn't use a condom last year. But no, but actually like I'm so happy that I have let myself to like take it as it has come. And like I have released that judgment, and I am like it's still obviously like the friendships and the relational changes really sting sometimes. And also like, I'm super here for it because there has been nothing, maybe outside of like my partner and like that decision of like who I'm gonna like long term share my life with, but nothing has quite clarified my values and made me so efficient and effective and so decisive. Coming from a very decisive person, I have like 100x my decisiveness as a mom, and I love that. So, yeah. Yay! I love motherhood. And also sometimes I'm like, "Oh my god, what if you just slept all day?" Because I have no desire to put blocks on that thing.
Which is fair. Two those feelings can coexist.
Yeah, it really
And
can. It's just as everyone said it would be. Honestly, this woman, I was like 8 months pregnant working an event, and someone said to me something to me that at the time, like, I haven't thought about it since that night, but now it's now I'm like, wow, yeah, nothing is more true. Motherhood is twice as hard as I could have ever imagined it would be, but 10 times the amount of joy I thought I could feel. So, yeah.
aw,
Now I want to wake up my baby. No,
aw.
absolutely
No,
not.
no,
Absolutely not. I
we're
will be
not doing that.
watching my little police procedurals and like living my best life at watching SVU or something tonight. No, no, no. Oh no, I need to post my like books that I read last month. That's what I need to do, because that makes me feel happy and jazzy. But yeah,
Yay.
those are my thoughts on motherhood. Wow.
Oh, I love that. Let us know if you want another episode on motherhood because we could do one.
We
We've
really could.
got
See, and here you thought we wouldn't have anything to talk about. Love
talking about
us.
being
Okay.
wrong.
I Yes, honestly, I love to be proven wrong. Honestly, okay, I was gonna say something, but I'll say it for next time. What are you listening to this week?
I'm so glad you asked. And we will absolutely be making a playlist about this because that's what we do. It's like we can't not do it. I've been listening to I was jamming in the car today, the same like 3 songs on the way to and from my field work today.
I'm ready.
The Last Dinner Party,
Okay.
have not heard? Oh, okay.
No.
They're a British like girl girl rock that's vaguely gothic and mythic and feminist. You give their hits a listen and
Okay.
let me know what you think. I've been listening to Nothing Matters, which is from I want to say it's their first full length album, not their most recent one. And then also Sinner's a classic. Um, Feminine Urge. Those 3 are from their first album. And then there's the second album that I can't remember the title. Um, oh, This Is the Killer Speaking, I think is the name of the song. And a lot of these songs I was not into on the first listen, and then the more I
You're
spent time with them,
so that girl sometimes. You're
I
like,
know.
I'm listening to this like gothic girl band, and the song is like, you were the kill. I'm like, oh my god. Anyways, what have I been listening to? Thank you so much for asking. I have been listening to "Where's My Husband" by
I
Ray.
still haven't heard it. It's been in my listen later for so long.
Olivia,
I know. I
so
can't
good.
help it. I'm an indie asshole.
I know, but please break out your shell. I'm begging you. It's so good. It's just like, oh, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just so
She's
good.
so talented. She's
My
incredible.
daughter loves it. She
Okay.
loves this song. My daughter loves all music, as we've discussed. But yeah, I've been listening to that, and then I've also been listening to the song called "En Privado" by Javi and Manuel Turizo. It's just like, I don't know how to describe the movement. Our listeners are
We're
like,
in a we're in a barrel floating on the lake. It's that
yeah,
it's
oh,
a little bouncy.
it's like, okay, I don't drink. Okay, I want to make it super, super clear. I don't drink Coors Light. But if I did, right? Like, I don't drink that stuff. But if I did like light beer, like it's just like a you're on a patio, and the both these songs in different ways. But like, you're on a patio, the sun is shining, you have a Corona. I'm gonna go with that one because that's better, with a little lime, and you're just swaying and having a great time. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's the vibe. That's the feeling that we're getting. So, we'll put the songs on a playlist. By the time you listen to this, there will be a playlist. So, you can see it in the show notes because we'll link the playlist there.
Love.
And we look forward to having you next week. If this was the first episode you listened to, wow, what a doozy. And as always, like, subscribe. What else do we say?
Leave us a review, comment,
Yeah,
share our clips on Instagram, share
yeah.
the link to the pod with your friends and coworkers. Anybody who's got a commute, hey.
I thought you were gonna say computer, and I was like, are we in the year 2002? Anyone who's got a computer. Um,
But also
yes,
that.
but also that. Share, subscribe. We love you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Stay messy.
Stay messy. Good night.